Welcome to The Late Viewer, where we talk about movies that might have been overlooked. Today we're going to be talking about a movie that got a 29% on Rotten Tomato. And I just want to add before we start this video, I almost never look at Rotten Tomato before I watch a movie, but I just found it interesting because I watched this movie, I liked it, and I looked it up, and the first thing that came out to me was the review. I want to tell you whether or not I think they were right. Let's get into it. So before I tell you the name of the movie, I'm going to read you two separate synopses, and please tell me if based on reading this or hearing this, if this is a movie you'd want to watch. So the first one goes, the story follows two completely separate families living in different countries. In Spain, a mother is trying to protect her young son from a faceless stranger appearing in his room. At the exact same time in London, a young girl starts having identical nightmares about a hidden entity called Hollowface, who creeps out of her closet to steal her face. The only clue connecting them is a handwritten horror story found hidden inside an old tree. So this is the first one, and then the second one, very short, but it reads, two children living in different countries both find themselves visited nightly by the same faceless being who wants possession of their souls. So what do you think? Tell me in the comments down below. Personally, when I read the second one, not the first one, but when I read it, I was very intrigued because my first thought was, how are these kids connected and why is this monster visiting both of them at the same time? I've already watched this movie, so I'm going to tell you my thoughts. And before I tell you my thoughts, the name of this movie is called Intruders. It was released in 2011 by Juan Carlos. So let's get into the thoughts. Okay, so first I want to introduce the idea of the cat and how it connects everything. So when the movie first started off, we're introduced to Juan, and the whole reason Juan, and I don't want to say the entire reason, but the main reason why Juan encounters Hollowface is because of his cat. So his cat climbs up a scaffolding and Juan is trying to help his cat, and in doing so he is introduced to Hollowface, who gets into his window. Then we encounter Mia. Mia tries to find her cat, who climbs up the tree, which is how she finds the letter or the note that was written, which unleashes Hollowface. And then the last instance of a cat we see is when John is throwing away his trash, and while he's throwing away his trash, he hears a cat. And that's literally the scene that happens before Hollowface appears again to John. And one of the things I want to say is that the reason why John hears the cat is because later on in the movie, it's revealed that Juan is John, John is Juan. So his name's changed. The reason why John hears the cat is because he's beginning to remember things about his childhood. And one of the things that happened in his childhood is that just before he encountered Hollowface, he was trying to save his cat. And that's why when he's throwing away the trash, he hears a cat, because just before Hollowface appears again, there is a cat. So that was my first thing in the movie. I was like, oh, okay, the cat must be important. Next, I want to talk about the note Mia read to her class and how that note is important because it gave power to Hollowface. So I'm going to read to you the first line that she read to her class. So the first line goes, Hollowface woke up because someone called his name. After many, many years, he was free. So this line basically is trying to talk about how we give power to our fears, to our anxiety, and without giving these things power, they have no power. But I think what's very interesting about this line is that this line draws into the theme of many movies. So, for example, we have Candyman, we have Freddy Krueger, we have Slenderman. All these beings, all these entities are only powerful because people speak power into them. Especially with Freddy Krueger, he's only powerful when the kids remember him. If they don't remember him, he has no power. If they don't dream about him, he has no power. So that's something I thought was very interesting. But also, another thing that this movie plays into is the importance or the power of writing things down, because Mia is literally writing her own story. When she's in her room and she's writing her story, she says that Hollowface found a new victim, which was the girl, and that girl is Mia. She talks about how he's devising a new plan, but she's literally writing word for word what is going to happen to her. So she's like, he's going to hide in her closet, he's going to come for her, he's going to get her. And I just thought it was interesting that the author is playing on that idea of our fears, where we're afraid of closets. Well, not right now actually, but when you're a child, you're afraid of underneath the bed, you're afraid of dark spaces, you're afraid of a monster hiding in the closet. And so he's playing on all the things that a child could be fearful of, and he's having Mia write those things down. Okay, so something else I noticed in the movie was the scene with the priest, and I'm gonna look off the screen and read what I wrote because I wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything, and because I had a lot to say about this scene. So let me just read this really quickly. This line shows the contrast in respect we show to younger versus older people. When the younger priest confronts the mother, Louisa, he tells the older priest that she didn't reveal everything to him. And the older priest basically calls him out, saying that's because the younger priest doesn't know how to treat a woman. It shows how the younger generation of authority figures completely lack empathy. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they lack empathy, but it shows that we see and treat older people differently than we do younger people. We automatically assume that because you're older, you have wisdom, you have experience that a younger person will not have. The movie also touches heavily on the idea of corrupt priests. So this is someone who's supposed to be completely free of judgment, but instead of offering grace, he's instantly judging the family while simultaneously making comments about how beautiful Louisa is. It exposes how hypocritical these institutions can be, and it proves that the movie is dealing with much heavier themes than a simple monster flick. And the reason why I said that is because I think a lot of people, when they initially saw or read the synopsis for this movie, they expected to see a lot of like exorcism and a lot of like jump scares and stuff, but this is not what this movie's about at all. All right, so another major reveal in the movie that kind of like starts to like tie in the movie nicely before we get to the ending. We have a scene where John, I keep referring to him as John, Juan and Louisa are in the park, and Juan is playing, but Louisa's sitting on the bench, and she looks off and looks very frightened and very afraid. And the priest just happens to see all this happen, and she like grabs Juan and she's like, let's go now. And he trails off to where she looked, and what she looked at was this man in the hoodie, which is what terrified her. And so this like wraps everything up, because when we see Hollowface in the movie, he always has a hoodie on. He's always, you never can see his face. And what scared Louisa was the man, because she couldn't see his face. He had a hoodie on and he looked suspicious. But when in that moment that she leaves with Juan, it's revealed that he's not a suspicious person at all. He was just a person who's waiting for his girlfriend. So this is another thing that I thought was very interesting in the movie. We come to see why Hollowface appears to both Mia, John, and Juan as a hooded being, a hooded entity, is because of that reason. Okay, so wrapping the movie up, it's revealed that Juan is in fact John, and the reason why his name change happened is because Louisa and Juan moved to England. She remarried, and her husband is English, so I'm assuming that John changes his name. Then we find out that the story that Mia found in the beginning of the movie was actually John's story. It was his summary of his childhood trauma, where Hollowface is not a faceless being, but he's actually a man. He's John's real father who tried to harm the family. And John, being a child, misremembers this event, and that is how Hollowface is born. So Hollowface is the personification of their fears, and that is pretty much what is revealed in the end of the movie. So if any of you have seen this movie before, I would love you to comment down below your thoughts. If you haven't seen this movie before, you can watch it on Tubi, which is where I watched the movie. I've been liking Tubi a lot lately. There's a lot of free movies. You don't have to pay for anything, so why pay for anything? But let's talk about whether or not I would recommend this movie to anyone, and if I think it actually deserved a 29% Rotten Tomato. I would recommend the movie. I think that if you realize what the movie's actually supposed to talk about, you enjoy it for what it is and not what you think it should have been. And I do get why that confusion happens, because before I watched the movie, I also was expecting like things like an exorcism or just not what the direction the movie went in. But once I realized that this movie and what it was talking about, I appreciated the movie for what it was, and I do like the movie. I think the movie was unjustly rated, but you know, it's a thing of the past, nothing we can change now, but I think it's a good movie and I would recommend the movie. So yeah, comment down below, let me know what you think, and I will see you guys in my next video.